Well, good afternoon, evening, good morning, wherever you are. Karen Bonafilio, Inner Realms, Outer Journeys. I have a very special guest today, and her name is Bridgett Peeples. Say hi,
Hi.
Bridgett.
Hi, how are you? Thank you, Karen, for having me.
Oh, I am so excited to have you on here, and I didn't know that you were my neighbor, just a hop, skip, and a jump away. So that's really exciting, and I am so glad you're here. So
Thank you.
I'm going to introduce her and then ask her some questions, and you guys are in for a ride. So buckle up. Okay, so Bridget, as a child, she noticed that her intuition was very strong. She followed her gut and she listened to herself. Her gift lay unknown for many years. As an adult, she started noticing patterns to the information she was receiving. In her 20s, she started working with the spiritual world. She found that she could receive messages from people who had transitioned, so they were behind the veil, and helping others. After 15 years of being a psychic medium, she uses her gift of communicating with spirit to bring through details, facts, names, and memories to validate the connection, which is really nice when you get validation when you're talking to a psychic medium, of letting you know that your loved ones are alive and well on the other side. And part of her gift is to provide insights in the journey ahead of you for those who share your path. So there you go. And you know me, I've told you guys, I use a psychic medium 1 to 2 times a year just as a tune-up to make sure, I'm on the right track. Okay, Bridget, is there anything you'd like to say before I start asking you questions?
No, I think it's great that you go twice a year to a psychic because I think as psychics we do have to go through other people to get
Yeah.
information sometimes or clarification for ourselves. So yes, I understand this and just recently did that myself.
Oh, you have to let me know who you use. But I'm going to use you sometime. But I will tell you, if I, and I always listen to my guides, but then my emotions get in the way too. So then I have to, that's why I love getting a tune up. So that's what I do.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Bridget, first, this is kind of redundant, but what first drew you to spirituality and psychic mediumship?
You know, I noticed patterns. So when I was especially when I was pregnant in my early 20s, it first started in dreams that I can recall. So I have 4 children. With
Wow.
each pregnancy was different, and so each pregnancy had a different psychic ability. So in 1989, I was probably 19, almost 20, and my husband was overseas at the time, and I would know just instinctively and intuitively he was going to call. So we're talking prior to computers, everything was snail mail, and I would be out somewhere with a friend, and I'd be like, "We got to go," and she'd say, "Why?" My husband's gonna call, and her boyfriend would look at us like, "You're crazy." And then sure enough, every time we would do that, and as we were walking in and put the key in the door, the phone would start ringing. He was over in Italy, so it wasn't like you could really plan those calls. So
Mhm.
and that was my little beacon, the baby. So that was the first one, and then with the second child with my husband, I would have dreams with that child, and that child's extremely empathic. The first child sees
Oh,
full apparitions. So each one of my children are psychic, and they all have different abilities. And so the pregnancies really define that. And then the
that's
last child,
cool.
yeah, the last child at 27, with him, I just started noticing more patterns. And then, at about age 30, I told my husband, I says, "You're going to think I'm crazy, but I think I'm a psychic." And of course, he laughed at me. And he would tease me relentlessly. And I'm like, I feel like I'm coming out of the closet. And so it's been 25 years. It kind of dates my age, but my husband would make fun of me. And when our youngest was about 3 years old, so it's about 30, he says, I kept having these visions of an impact, an accident, and he wanted to sign, and I wanted to sign to say, "Gosh, am I really gifted, or am I just nuts? Am I going
Mhm.
crazy? Am I losing my mind?" So, sure enough, for 11 days, I kept feeling this impact. I kept seeing a semi and a white pickup. And when Spirit's teaching you a lesson, and this is really important for those on their spiritual path, when they're teaching us a lesson, they will not give us we will not recognize that it's us that's going to be involved in the situation sometimes when it's a
Oh,
lesson. So my
okay.
husband was driving semi at the time, and I didn't make the connection because it was just like a veil over me that
Oh,
he was the
sure.
semi in question, and the white pickup on the 11th day T-boned him at 65 miles an hour.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it was a horrific scene, a horrific crash. And earlier that day, I just, somebody kept, kind of derailing my morning where I'd normally be on the phone with him. And I wasn't. So he had his hands on the wheel and was focused when it hit him. But it disabled his semi. His load didn't shift. Both of them walked away without a scratch. And it was,
Both of them walked away
both
without a
of them.
scratch.
Yeah, the
Did
gentleman
you?
in the pickup only had seatbelt burns.
Wow.
That was
Did
it.
you share that premonition with him before
Oh
it
yeah.
happened?
Yeah. The first on the 11 days prior, we had a bunch of people in the car, and we were coming back from our anniversary dinner with friends. And when we dropped off the last person, I said, "Someone in this car is getting in a really bad wreck," And then every day I could actually feel the impact. And the night before the
Oh,
collision, I was just outside, and I was like, "Don't you feel it?" And my kids, my husband, crazy. And they're like, "No, you're nuts." And I'm like, "Did that car just hit us?" Because I could feel the impact. And my kid's like, "No one hit the car, Mom." And so my husband literally patted my forehead like this and kissed me and said, "You need a nap." So after the next day, I get a phone call, and sure enough, I feel like I'm hearing the phone ring. I get home and I look on the caller ID and there's nothing, but sure enough, it starts ringing, and it was him to let me know that he was T-boned by a white pickup.
oh my gosh. That's
So,
crazy. That is
yeah, and the
crazy.
32-year-old me was like, wanting all the details.
See, I was right.
Exactly.
I
So
got
I
a
don't do
couple
that.
questions about that.
Sure.
Your kids have the ability, but some of they're stronger in different areas, it sounds like.
That is correct. I'm a firm believer that all of us are psychic, but we turn it off at some point. And I think because they grew up in a household with it all the time, they never really turned that off. So my oldest two children, my daughter and my son, they actually see full apparitions. And my daughter is now 39. She kept, turning it off, didn't want any part of it, but it's just in her face now. So they just show up and she's like, "What do you want?" And my son's in the Navy. He's a naval chief. He
Uh-huh.
same thing. He sees it, and he has a 5-year-old daughter, and she's extremely psychic as well. I mean, that girl is scary psychic.
I
But
think
yeah,
that
it's
is so cool.
amazing.
Wow.
Not unless you're trying to hide something from them or surprise them.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, yeah, at 5 years old, she knows and talks to my deceased relatives that she's never met. She's always having conversations. Luckily, her mom has been around us long enough to know that that's just how we are in the family, and she doesn't say anything, but she might ask her some questions.
Mhm.
And the little child is spot on at 5. It's kind of scary. Yeah.
Well, kudos to you for encouraging that with your kids. So, what could people do that have young children? How could they encourage that for their children? And what if they don't feel they have the ability?
Right.
Would that be something
So
you could answer?
absolutely. When it comes to children or people of any age, really, I tell people to write down what they're telling you. Like if you see a child outside looking up and kind of at the ceiling or the sky or the trees and talking to someone, ask probing questions. "Oh, well, who's your friend? When you want to introduce me to him, and those kinds of things. And then write down, maybe keep a journal with the date, who they talked to, what they said, and then when you have some validation, like someone comes over and says, "Yeah, my mom so and so," write down the date that you have the validation, right? So that
Oh,
really helps keep a track record for them and for you to know, okay, they're not crazy. There's
mhm.
something going on. My granddaughter, for example, I bought a costume to go because I'll be in Virginia for Halloween with her. And she told her mom on the way to school what we were both going to wear for Halloween. And we didn't tell her we were going to surprise her. So she ruined the surprise.
Oh, that's
And
very
I was
cool.
like, "Oh, you little stinker," but we catch her talking with relatives that have passed all the time. And she'll tell me about them as well. And I'm like, that's wonderful. And how are they doing over there? And she's like, oh, they're doing great. They love me so much. And she'll say, Grandma so and so's doing this and Grandma so and so is doing that. And I'm like, and that's exactly the personalities that they had. And she's able to talk about things that she sees them doing, which was pretty relevant in their life as well. So that's kind of the cool part where I'm like, wow, you're 5. And she's been doing this since she could talk.
Okay,
And,
because I have an ulterior motive too, because I have a granddaughter who just turned 2.
uh-huh.
So I'm going to, and my daughter's psychic like I am. I don't think
Yeah.
she sees apparitions. And I'm going to tell her what to do with baby Emily now. So thank you
Yeah.
about that. Um,
Absolutely.
you said you notice patterns. Could you explain that?
The patterns, yes. So,
Hmm.
for example, if it's so when I was I'll go back a couple of years. When I was first starting off in my psychic abilities or noticing them, I should say, and awakening them, there's patterns to it. Like if you see the same dream over and over, then when the event happens and you get that kind of clarity and deja vu, you're able to avoid it. So when I was pregnant with my third child, I kept having dreams. And I would tell my husband, there's this event going to happen. I kept seeing, I could hear like metal under my tires. I seen this big oak tree, and then there was a black van. And every time I saw the van, I'd wake up. And we had
So
a
in your
different,
mind's eye, you were saying that.
in my mind, I was sitting in my dreams, and only with this particular one. And it kind of goes
Okay.
to the timeline. So with this pregnancy, I said, the people I'm with, I know them, but it's not anyone I would normally hang out with. So I'm really baffled by this, and I was only 23 at the time. And I said, and it's not our car, I said, I don't know whose car I'm driving. Well, about within 90 days, I think it was close to 90 days, we got a new car. And as I
Oh,
was driving, I hand my daughter a bottle to give to the other little one that's in the back seat,
uh-huh.
and I realized that's the vehicle that I'm driving in
Oh
that
my
premonition.
God.
So I tell my husband, and he says, "Oh, I'll drive," because we had to drive back. And I said, no, no, it's fine. And I knew intuitively and matter of factly that knowing that he was not with me. So he was fine. Get in the car, you're safe, you're not with me. 2 weeks later, his grandma, grandpa, and some family came from Oregon to visit us. My husband was in the Navy, and they wanted to go to the casino, the grandma and the sister. So I'm getting ready and everything's fine, and I got my whole belly out there. And as we're driving, I start getting sick to my stomach, like that gut feeling, you get sick.
Oh
And
God.
as I'm driving, and I'm getting closer and closer to the danger,
Oh God.
right? I start getting sicker. All of a sudden, I notice the tree in my dreams, that big oak tree. I turn the corner and I hear this rolling under the tires, which I now know was cattle crossing. I grew up in the city. And I whipped the car around and just said, I'm feeling really sick. We need to go back. And just as we came out of the U turn, there was that black van on my bumper.
Oh my gosh.
So we avoided, a potential head-on collision. So my dream would always stop there, and so all the signs, were there. And that particular child's an empath.
That's
He
crazy.
doesn't see spirit like everyone else, but yeah, but he feels it. And so there was a lot of different things during that pregnancy. But since then, when I first started, I would say things would happen in 90 days, like the
Hmm.
2004 tsunami in Indonesia. I kept feeling that for about 90
Really?
days. And I
Wow.
knew
That
it
was
was 1226, I knew, and I was getting a couple of different things that were going on. I just kept feeling waves of water. And I kept telling my mom, I need to get higher and higher. So we went up the mountains, and I said, I just don't feel like I'm high enough up these regular hills when you go up a mountain. And sure enough, on the 26th that morning, my mom called and said, you were right, there's that tsunami. At the time, I didn't know where it was going to be because I was still early in my development. So I just didn't take the time to see where in the world it was going to happen. But I knew it was coming.
that was so devastating. So devastating. Yeah, to all the
Yes.
people there. My gosh.
I know. And so those kinds of things have happened over the years. And as I get older and as we develop our abilities, they just start to unfold. And now I can pretty much sit with someone and know, right away what's going on. As long as they're open to receiving, I can pick up on people really quickly. I still have dreams on occasion that take a little bit longer. It depends on the event, though, I've noticed. So if it's something catastrophic, it's usually about 90 days ahead of time. And then I also feel earthquakes anywhere around the world. If it's over a 6.4, I can feel it. And then I have to go, okay, because I feel the vibration and I have to figure out where it's coming from. So, yeah.
I think you're fascinating. I
Thank you.
do. I think you are just so fascinating. I love listening to your stories.
Well,
um, Let
it
me
can be
ask you,
unnerving at times.
what's that?
It can be a little unnerving at times when you're sitting and you're like, earthquake. And then you're like, okay, where is it?
But it's kind of nice you get advance warning. So it's not going to be immediate, which is really kind of cool. Um,
Yes, it's usually within a couple of hours. January 1st, the Japan earthquake. I know California had one, and someone in Japan had another one a couple months back. And I was having a conversation with a gal. We were doing coffee in the afternoon, and all of a sudden I go in mid sentence, earthquake, and she goes, "What?"
Not here, someplace else.
And she goes, she knows me well, and she's like, "Where is it at?" And I'm like, "Oh, Japan and California." But California's was 2 days later. But Japan, it was like during when it happened or earlier. Yeah, it was crazy.
So
So
you have
within 24 hours,
fine-tuned yourself because you can now tell where it's going to happen.
I ask and they tell me. Yeah. Instead
So,
of trying to figure it out, I just ask them and they tell me.
so when you say you ask and they tell you, who is they?
I'm assuming they're my guide, my angels or my guides. Yeah,
Okay.
because there's a little bit of difference between the psychic and the mediumship. So when I get a response right away, I'm pretty certain those are my guides telling me versus a loved one. The
Yeah.
loved one usually my head will tingle. It's like it feels almost like when you put a balloon and then you get your hair, that tingling sensation.
Hmm.
That will be someone coming from the other side. And on the psychic ability part, that just comes straight in from my guides.
Okay, so you get a tingling on your head. That's kind of something that makes you aware. Okay,
Yes.
very cool.
Yes.
Let's say you were going to do a reading. How do you prepare yourself for that reading, that session?
A lot of people spend a lot of time, and I know this is going to sound bad, in meditation. I really don't do that because mine's pretty much on all the time.
Okay.
So for me, for preparing, I might call in, like I'll sit at my a desk and I'll light a candle or something and just say, okay, I have so and so coming in.
Hmm.
Whoever wants to show up, show up. And sometimes they'll show up early.
Hmm.
And I sometimes, like I just did a Rasani fair over the weekend in Albany. It's a big event. And this gentleman sits down for a reading. And I go, I have a gentleman here that passed away. And I go, he's your neighbor. And he goes, I don't have any neighbors that pass. And I'm like,
Oh
and the
no.
man's like, yes, you do, and I'm like, and then I'm like, hold on. And I go, oh, so like a loved one's neighbor, but you know who this is. And he couldn't figure it out. So about 20 minutes later, the girlfriend then comes for a reading. And we're talking, and I said, your grandpa's here. She goes, yeah, he passed away and he was my neighbor.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, so I
Oh,
started laughing, and she
yeah.
looked at me kind of, I go, I'm not
Why are
laughing
you
at that.
laughing? It's not funny.
I said, this is why I'm laughing. I said, so your boyfriend who was here, he didn't know who the neighbor was because I knew it was a loved one and it was like a grandfather figure. And he's like, nope, nope, nope. Well, he now lives there with her. And at the time the man passed, he hadn't lived there.
Oh,
So
okay.
her grandpa showed up early and he's like, I'm grandpa, I'm the neighbor, and this guy's like, nope, nope. So it was quite comical. And so sometimes they will show up early for a session. And I'm like, have to figure out until the person appears who it's for.
So if you're doing a one-on-one and you don't
Mhm.
know that person, sometimes do you get the information prior to even sitting with them or talking to them?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll have me put on like a piece of jewelry, like a necklace or a ring. They'll play with my hair. They just do different things. And it's kind of the indications
Mm-hmm.
the way I filter my information. I kind of know, like, if I start playing with my necklace partway through, I know that they have a keepsake or maybe ashes or something, some kind of necklace. They're wearing something of this person. Could be a ring on a chain or what have you. But I'll start holding my necklace halfway through, and that's my symbol from them that there's something very sentimental that they have. And sometimes they'll have me look at my hands and, oh, were they missing a finger? And so, because I'll be like, what's going on? But a lot of times now, as I continue to grow and develop, as we all are, um, they will come through. They'll take out my voice. I'll get not breathe. They'll if they were someone who used an insulin or an IV needles that they shouldn't have, like an overdose or an accidental whatever. They'll actually start tapping on my arm looking for a vein.
Oh
So I'll
my
be like,
God.
at work, I watch a lot of blood draws and insulin shots. So I can kind of tell when they start tapping on my arms, what they're trying to tell me. So just a lot of different things for people that are developing. They're going to use things that only you're familiar with. And every psychic and every reading you get will be different because we
Yes.
all have a different filter. And a
Yep.
lot of people will say, well, this person told me this, and I'm like, okay, and I have to explain how they process information. So, and there's a lot of people out there that do like to scam people. So I try to tell everyone, make sure you can validate something that they tell you. Have some kind of a validation, in that reading so that you know that you can trust the information that you're getting.
I know the psychics that I see, they don't want to know anything about you. They don't
I
want
don't
to
either.
know anything, and then they'll start talking and hopefully get validation from the person who's getting the reading. But they
That
don't
is
want to know anything.
No, I don't either. The
Yeah.
less I know about you, the better. Yeah. And people will sometimes email me, and I'm like, whatever you do not tell me any details. I just want your name, and that's it. Don't tell me anything. Because a lot of people will ask, well, what should I tell you? Please, nothing. Nothing. Tell
Mhm.
me nothing. Because you really want that authentic reading. And sometimes people will send you a lot of information about someone that they want to connect with. And truly, someone else will come through.
Yeah. So don't do that.
Yeah, I
Brid-
don't advise people to give information.
yeah. Bridget, how do you differentiate between your own thoughts and the messages you receive?
That's where it gets tricky. It's just fine tuning over time. Truly, it takes trust and validation. So and there's a knowing. I mean, it's almost like if you see a stop sign, for example.
Hmm.
If I say stop sign, everyone can visualize a stop sign in their head, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of like that. You'll get an image or you'll get something, and it feels different. It's almost like, again, if they're telling you the stop sign is a yield sign and it's yellow, and clearly it's a red stop sign. It's that knowing the difference is the best way to describe that for me. I know the difference. And if it's
Okay. That's
not
good.
certain, yeah, it's a knowing.
So you believe that everybody has psychic ability. If you need, yeah, take a drink. We can drink. um, what do you recommend for people that want to start learning about the ability that they have not used or accessed?
Yeah, I think meditation's a great thing and journaling. I tell a lot of people to
Yeah.
start journaling and automatic writing. For people that can meditate, great. But meditate with a journal, with a pad of paper and a pen in your hand,
Hmm.
and just kind of see what comes through. And I tell people, because I teach classes, I tell them just to let it flow, that sometimes when they're learning to write through you, it's going to look funny. They might start with I, them, they, all the little words, and then they get bigger. But if you're really picking up something and you're like, what is that? And you write it down, that's usually your guides trying to tell you something so that you don't forget something. So they're always intervening with us, but we don't realize that it's coming from a higher connection.
Right,
It's just like,
right.
driving down the road and all of a sudden you just get this, I better turn right. You don't know why, but you do it.
You do it. Yeah.
You do it. Yeah.
With the meditation, some
Excuse me.
people have a hard time clearing their mind. Is that crucial or? And when you
No,
say meditation, a lot of people go, "Oh no, please no."
myself
Yeah.
included, absolutely. Um, I will count. I will count to the count of four. Take a breath in for four, hold it for a count of four, release it to a count of four, and then wait a count of four, and then start the process over.
Okay.
As I'm ADHD myself, so I have what they call squirrel brain all the time. It's always on, and so I have to find ways to calm my brain.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. All right. I think that'll help people a lot.
yeah,
Now, I know
it's,
that there's different types of energy, and some can be negative. How
yes.
do you protect yourself from that?
And that's a great question. So I don't always remember to protect myself. I'm gonna be a little honest and wrap
Uh-huh.
myself out here for a bit. But I am getting better about I just ask my guys to show up and protect me. Some people believe that you have to do this big 20-minute ritual. You don't. From what I find, I know it's like all these
No, I
teachers.
agree with you. I agree with you. You know, it's just like prayer. There isn't a right or wrong way to pray. You know,
No.
just start talking and praying. You don't, well, I
Yeah.
won't go into that. Sorry. I won't go
No,
down
no,
that
you're
road.
fine. But it's true. So
Yeah.
I have a young man and he's in New York. He called me yesterday. He's in school. He goes, "Well, you were right. I'm changing my major." And I just smiled. And he goes, "But I'm having so much anxiety." And I says, "Well, sweetheart, you're an empath and a psychic. So what I need you to do is act like you're doing a jumping jack, right? And you're just bringing that white light above your head, taking your arms and doing that, and that's just creating a bubble for yourself. You can act like you're stretching if you're out in public. No one needs to know what you're doing, and just kind of raise your arms up like you're stretching over your head, and just say, my guides put a white light of protection, a bubble around me, and just lift your arms up and
That's
create that
awesome.
space. And
Great,
that's what I
great
do. Yeah,
advice.
yeah.
That's
I
really
didn't.
good.
Yeah, that's just the best way to do it. And it's interesting because for people that do energy work as well, I'm learning more of that. As we lift up, we're strengthening ourselves, and if we pull it down, we're releasing our power. We're dropping our guard. So
I'm
it's
going to
always
try
good.
that. I'm going to try that tomorrow.
It
The,
works
stretch,
well.
the stretching up. And
Yeah.
because I always think about putting, to bring love in and the
Hmm.
negativity out when I'm breathing. But I like
And
that.
that's great too.
Yeah,
That's
I
wonderful.
like that using your body with that too.
Yeah.
And then
I
sometimes I've
yeah.
got the squirrel brain and it's going, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, and then I got to bring myself back to center, so I don't
Yes.
be, I'm not doing that.
Yes, and right now I think with all the energies, I mean, we're all feeling all the planetorial energy right now. It's kind of chaotic. And
Hmm.
so it's more important to do that. And I also visualize it being out around me 8 feet in every direction. And then as things come in that are negative, I just watch them dissipate back to the person through a filter of love. And so I'll telepathically say that. And I
Hmm.
also tell people if they struggle with the bubble, get a hula hoop or visualize a hula hoop, right? And
Hmm.
have the energy go from Mother Earth to heaven and step into that as your protection and let it carry you throughout the day. Just visualize everywhere you go. You've got basically this tube of white light around you, and that helps.
So am I being too Pollyanna and thinking that I'm too light and I won't attract that negative energy?
No, you'll still attract negative energy because it has to do with your thoughts. So I work with a lot of people on manifesting. So
Hmm.
it's almost like if someone else is putting out a lot of anger and a lot of hateful energy out there, you're
Hmm.
gonna feel it, energetically. It will still affect you. And so what I do is I just release people at the end of the day that I've come across, and I just send all their energy back to them through a filter of love. And
Yeah.
again, because sometimes we're going to step into something and we're going to drive to a location, and as soon as we like pass that threshold, we're like, "Whoa, what is that?" Even though your
Uh-huh.
defenses are up, you notice it right away, and you're like, "Okay, I need to turn around and leave." But it pushes
Hmm.
up against that bubble that we create, and sometimes if they're really powerful, it'll still get through. So we got
Wow.
got to remember to just try to keep it out there. And as you know, the majority of the people on our planet do not do protection or
No,
prayer or ask their
no.
angels to come,
Mm-mm.
those kinds of things. So it's a good idea to do it, but I sometimes forget myself and I'll be like, why is today hard? And I'm like, wait a minute, I need to focus. So I'll just send everyone's energy back to them.
I
Yeah.
usually do that right when I get in the car. I actually talked to Archangel Michael about having my
Okay.
car in a bubble of protection as I'm
Hmm.
going about my day. Yeah,
Yes, I do too.
very
I do. I
interesting.
call them the angels myself. I go
Hmm.
front to back, side to side, like a big bubble, like the protection bubble. Yeah. So, and because I travel a lot too, and so I always want to be protected.
Yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. But I think you get nice warnings ahead of time, because it's not your time to go, so they're gonna warn you and let you know, which is very very cool.
I completely believe that. There's been, and I asked them about near death experiences because they fascinate me. I love to interview people about those. And it's amazing though, because they showed me different places for potential checkout points throughout my life to this point. And I was kind of surprised because there was a
Yeah.
lot of things I'd forgotten.
So I have heard that when it's your time, you go, no matter what. I
Yes,
also heard of exit points that we write them into our plan before we come.
that is
Are you a
correct.
believer in that we write those exit points?
I am only because I've interviewed so many people. So I would say yes. I think that depending on your soul evolution and how many times you've reincarnated is going to make the difference. So it's almost like there's different hierarchies, for example. People that have had multiple lifetimes and they're like more evolved as a soul, they might just have the one in and the one out, right? And then a younger soul who hasn't had maybe as many incarnations might have a point where, gosh, they could check out here. Nope, they're going to check out here. Nope, they could check out here. So they have multiple opportunities and then they have a final end date. It's
That's
like some
interesting.
people, yeah, and
Mhm.
some people have crossed over. I have several friends who've crossed over, and God has basically said, or a loved one, you're going back. It is not your time.
I
And
don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that when I get over there. It's not your time. No, I'm staying. You're not sending me back.
you're not going to make. And some people, when they get over there, they give them the free will choice if they want to come back or not. So
Well,
it's
I can
interesting.
Yeah, I can see that. Maybe if something you still want to do, or your family needs you, or something. But I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't think I'd want to come back.
Yeah, my friend did not want to come back. She was in a
Mhm.
horrific collision, broke almost every bone in her body at 22, and
Oh,
she didn't believe in God prior. And
oh,
she honestly, when she's like, "Can I please stay here?" And God, Jesus, she was on Jesus's lap in the garden with all the other kids, and he goes, "You're going back." She's pleading with him. And he goes, "You're going back to be a teacher." She goes, "I don't want to be a teacher. They don't make any money." So she's trying to plead with God. And I'm laughing about her story, and I'm just like, oh my God. But she was pleading, and it was such a great story because her grandfather, who looked to be in his early 30s, picked her up in his favorite pickup truck when she got to the other side
oh,
and took her to
beautiful.
the garden to Jesus. And he basically told her, "You got to go back." And she's like, "But I don't want to." He's like, "It's not your time." So sure enough, they shoved her back in the body. She goes, "That was painful." And I kind of
Yeah.
laughed. I'm
Hmm.
sorry. And then I've had other people tell me that they were given the choice if they wanted to come back.
I
So
wonder
there
what
is,
determines that. I wonder what determines you get to choose if you want to stay here or go back. I don't
I
know.
believe it's a soul level. I think it depends on where your soul is and how many experiences they've had. Because
Hmm.
I am a firm believer because I work with elderly people and
Hmm.
I've seen a lot. And I truly believe that, when it's their time, it's their time. So even if
Right.
they bump their toe and get a aneurysm, a blood clot and it goes to the brain, or they have a reaction to a medication and it's their out point, they're leaving.
Right.
And then you see these
Right.
people in horrific collisions. I have a friend like that, and she said as the concrete truck was hitting her little Fiat back in the late 80s,
Oh my
that
gosh.
or the impact as she saw him coming, she screamed and her soul was out of the body. And so she just watched and hovered over the scene of the accident at the time. And then she heard this voice command that she go back down there, and she wasn't hurt at all. There was not a scratch on her. And she climbed out of the back of her vehicle. They don't even know how that happened. And she just climbed out, not a
A
scratch,
Fiat.
and in a Fiat by a
Yeah,
mixer,
a
a
Fiat.
concrete mixing truck. Yeah, he ran a red
Wow.
light. Mhm.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So there's just so many of those really cool stories. And again, on the other side, it just really depends on, I think, your soul and what you signed up for.
I don't know if this question is relevant, but I'm thinking about the work that you have shared with me that you do in your I don't want to say real life, but have you ever been around someone and you knew that they were going to be transitioning soon?
Yes,
You
and
know you work with the elderly.
yeah. So I always tell people, God never tells me when it's their time, right? And
Right.
this is one of the best
Yeah.
examples. It's like
Mhm.
saying, well, I know I'm leaving 2 o'clock on Tuesday, right? So what are you going to do between now and Tuesday at 2 p.m., right? I had a neighbor though. He had really bad MS, and I went to his house, and I'm like, "What are you doing in bed?" And he goes, "Oh, he actually coded and died. Was on the other side, and they didn't see his DNR, so they brought him back, and he was mad as heck." So
Oh.
so it took me a while because I was still young, right? And in Oregon we have death with dignity, so it's been at least 20 years, and or more, 25 years now. And he says, "Well, I'm waiting to die. I'm going to be gone at 2 o'clock on Tuesday." So I always use that analogy. I'm like, whatever, I'm just laughing at him, and him and I love to razz each other.
Right.
He died at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, and I'm like,
I'm sorry. It's not funny, but it is.
no, it was. And for the longest time, he finally says to me, probably a couple years back, he goes, "By the way, silly girl," he goes, "2 o'clock on Tuesday, I took the pill." And I'm like, "Oh, you
Oh.
little rat." So that's how he knew when he was going. But anytime people ask me when someone's going to die, I go, "Well, they don't." And I always use the 2 o'clock on Tuesday analogy and I hear him laughing in my head. I'm like, "Larry, go away." But
So,
he did do that, and I was like, "You're a brat." But it took a while, and so that death with dignity pill is what he ended up doing because they brought
and
him
I
back.
heard from my parents' hospice nurse, it is hard to get that, even though
It
it's
is.
by law. But it's
Yeah.
very hard to get a doctor to sign off and then a pharmacy to
Yes.
sign off and make sure you're mentally
Yes.
competent and
Yeah.
the
It
whole
it
thing.
is, and because of the DNR and the fact that they revived him, is why he was able to get it. So there is different qualifying, like you said, qualifying conditions you have to have and meet. I think his because they brought him back. My son's an EMT, and they'll be doing CPR on someone. They'll look at the pink. They'll notice a pink form. And they're like, "What does it say?" They're like DNR, and they got to jump off of them.
Yeah, I've got it on my fridge.
Yeah, yeah,
I do.
they jump off. Yeah, they do. And if they brought him back, they're like, "Uh oh, like, don't tell me."
Now what do we do?
That's what happened. They're like, "Oh God, what do we do?" I'm like, "Well, you're committed now to take the body, take them to the hospital, and if they end up transitioning, they're great. But quit working on them, so they have to jump off of them. So yeah,
Oh, do
I'm
they
like,
really? If they realize that,
yeah,
it'll
yeah.
just put a
If
foot
there's a
back in.
DNR, yeah, they have to stop immediately what they're doing. Yeah, and usually when you're on a scene, you're going to do what you need to do, and then you see that, and you're like, "Wait a minute." And sadly, not everyone's trained in case you're out on the road or you're not near it. Someone's going to try to bring you back.
Ooh, I don't carry anything with me in my car about that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you never know. You never know. And I just say, well, again, everything's in divine order always.
Right.
So I'm that
Exactly.
firm believer that
Hmm.
if they bring you back, it wasn't yet your time, regardless of what the paper says. You know. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
I totally agree with that.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Um, I know I have a psychic that I see in the area, and when she sees like a bunny, it means something specific that to her. Do you have symbols like that too?
Yes. And like you said, it depends on the symbol. So yes, I do.
Hmm.
A street sign with an arrow to the left, it means to move on. Don't go
Oh,
to another line of questioning or comments, because they're like looking at you, you see this arrow, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to go over here and focus. Like if I'm doing a gallery reading, for example, I have maybe 50 people in the audience. I see that street sign with an arrow. I know to just walk on past that person because they really don't want to know in a group setting.
oh,
So There's symbols like that. I might see a pickup truck, like an older pickup truck, that told me the kind of vehicle they drove. I see metal, sheets of metal for in welding. So there's different things that I will see, and it represents certain things. It just
I like
depends.
those group readings.
I do
I
too.
never, I think I think I've attended maybe four in my area in the last few years, and COVID, destroyed everything. And the
Yeah.
one time someone came through to me, I didn't recognize it. And then my friends were like hitting me, Karen, Karen. And then I realized who it was. But it didn't make sense. And the poor psychic keeps talking and talking for validation. And I finally realized, oh, that's me. That's my friend. That's Jerry. Yeah.
Happens all the time, believe it or not. I had my most recent one, the Reed Opera House in Salem. I did one in August, and there was these two young men on the other side, and they were coming through, and nobody was claiming him in the group. I'm like, really? None of you
Wow.
know who? 10 minutes later, here comes this kid walking in. I'm like, oh, it's you. So they showed
Oh.
up early, and sure enough, and he was so terrified. He came as a guest. I don't think he really knew what he was coming for.
Oh.
And several people showed up, and as I'm telling them about the person, I said, I have someone here that drowned. I said I could feel the rocks and the water under my feet, and I started choking on water, and that's how I knew because I'm spitting like choking. I'm like, oh, who drowned? Okay, and the guy's just ashen white, and he's
Oh.
terrified. And I go, do you want me to not give you the message? He goes, you know, like okay, but he was fine with the other two. And like when I'm dealing with like suicide or an accidental passing of narcotics or something, or they do something, or I like to say when they take responsibility for their passing, that's a suicide for me. Instead of no, because I know how they take their lives usually, that if it's a suicide and I'm reading someone. So instead of giving them all the gory details, and being really brash with a family member because
Oh.
it's so traumatic, I
Mhm.
just say, they're taking responsibility for their passing. Would this be accurate? And they'll usually say yes. I don't have to tell them how they did
No.
it. I know how they did it, but again, I want to be respectful. And then I might have someone that was doing something they shouldn't have been doing. So that will be, they had a hand in their passing. So we're doing something, we're somewhere, like we're doing donuts in a car, and the
Oh.
car rolls over, right?
Right.
So they had a hand in their passing, or they are drinking, even though the doctor says don't drink and take these meds with the alcohol, it could kill you. Again, they participate in their passing. So they
Hmm.
had a hand in it. So for me, I have different language that I use based on what I'm getting from the person.
Very,
So,
very cool.
yeah.
Bridget, I find you fascinating. I seriously do. And I do want to talk to you a little bit after this recording. Um,
Sure.
is there anything that you would like to talk about or mention before we finish? Anything I didn't hit or anything you want to share or and
No, I
sorry, I don't mean to
appreciate.
interrupt you, but I
No, no,
will
no.
I sorry. I will put up your information below our video so people can contact you also.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I
Oh,
was just
sure.
going to say, for people that are wanting to learn more about their development, I encourage you to do so because the more you can be aware of your surroundings, especially in times like we're living today with different events and things going on here in the United States, it's always good to have your awareness up, and to pay attention and notice those subtle signs that your guides are trying to communicate with you to keep you safe. And so I think that's the best thing I would say for people.
So I understand what you mean, but not everybody is in the same spot.
Right.
How can people, would that be your intuition talking to you that they should listen to, or can you be a little
Yes,
more specific for them?
absolutely. So intuition is definitely listening to your intuition. When I was very young, I would get stomach aches if I was in danger. And
Oh.
so that would keep me out of a dangerous situation. Like the closer I got to danger, the more my stomach would start hurting. And
Hmm.
I would pay, so I wouldn't go a certain place. Or if I decided to go home because I couldn't go because I was in so much abdominal pain, I would
Hmm.
literally turn around. And as I'm leaving the situation and I'm getting closer to safety, my stomach would no longer hurt.
Oh, okay.
Be at a point where I'm just all of a sudden I'm really, really sick and I'm like, what is this? I need to go, and that takes me out of the danger. So there's different signs for everyone, but it is an intuitive, it's a gut instinct. And I encourage people to listen to their gut instincts for
Yeah.
sure.
Not
Yeah.
negate it and welcome that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Because I
Oh.
didn't know what it was at the time, and I know as I'm older. So if
Mhm.
a young person can hear that, I hope they do. Listen,
Oh.
makes
Is
a
there
difference.
anything else you'd like to discuss?
No, I'm
No.
just open to whatever. So whatever you want to talk about, I'm good. But no, I think we're good. Yeah. Anything else you want to know, just always reach out, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, sounds good. I thank you very much for coming on the channel, and I look forward to getting to know you.
Oh, me too. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.